Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. I have the opportunity today to work on a Shimano reel. It's another one that Scott had brought into me on his flea market finds. And this is a Shimano Triton Star. It's a star adjusted drag reel. This one's interesting. It says custom built for Shimano headquarters. And I know Scott's been doing some flea market finds. That's kind of where a lot of these reels come from. His purchases at flea markets. I believe he's been in the Pasadena area, and I think, if I recall, Shimano's headquarters is in Irvine. So it would make sense, possibly, that this was made for the Shimano headquarters, and maybe as a giveaway reel or something. I don't know. And that's always the fun. If reels could talk, you know, what would we learn from them? Well, this one was made in 1987 or thereabouts. We're going to show you how to take it apart, service it, and keep it going again, because this is one of those nice reels that will last a lifetime if properly serviced. Well, I'm starting by taking the exterior pieces and parts off. As I do, I want to encourage you to subscribe to my channel, and if you do subscribe to my channel, please hit that notification button. If you like the art of reel repair, if you like learning about fishing reels, seeing how they're maintained, and a little bit about mechanically how they work, well, then subscribing is the best way to do that. The notification button will tell you when I am posting them, and you'll get an opportunity to choose which reels you want to see that I'm working on. I work on all kinds. Last few seem to have been in a saltwater groove, and we certainly work on the freshwater. We work on spinning reels, bait casting reels, and the like. And, well, that subscription and notification button will be the best way to find out what I'm doing. Well, we found out that this hasn't been serviced in a while. There's some old grease just kind of hanging there. And I've just been trying to mop around the gear stem. I should have just taken this off and worked on it. Well, one of the things I like about the Shimano reels and the Daiwa reels of the time, look at the quality of the material. Look at how thick that handle blank is. It's a nice piece. You won't find that today, that's for sure. Well, we're going to take this star adjuster off next. On that star adjuster, there is a round circular washer that kind of is a protector between the star adjuster and the handle. You'll see it come off in a moment. Sometimes it comes off, sometimes it just stays inside as an insert. But if you're working on it and you find that you're stuck with it, well, you'll find that there is that insert there. Underneath there is a shim washer for the bearing. I'm going to take this one off because it never seats easily anyway. This is the piece I was referring to, and that goes inside your star adjuster. Alright, with those three pieces off, you can see that the first one's a huge bearing in there. I'm going to take the opportunity to oil that one right now. That's an exposed bearing. It's not shielded or anything. And now we're going to take off the 4 screws on the front and the 2 small screws on the back, which are going to enable us to service this side of the reel. You have to take both sides off. This spool will not come out from the gear side. It needs to come out from the other side. When I take the screws out, the first thing I want to do is lay them down on my table. I want to make sure that all of those screws are the same size. And Shimano, among certain manufacturers, is one of the manufacturers that likes to change up the screw sizes in side plates. So you need to note where those screws are coming from if they're not the same size. Just mark it mentally or otherwise. And one of the ways to mark it is to take pictures as you're taking the reel apart. Those pictures will help you immensely in trying to put the reel back together. Well, this one seems like a different screw. The other 3 came out with the Phillips head. This one is either a replacement screw or just plain a different screw, and it's much easier to take out with a flat-bladed screwdriver. Well, it looks like it's all the same. Maybe it was just being stubborn. So when I take those 4 screws out, they go into a parts tray. That's where it holds all the pieces that I remove. You can't take that side plate off yet. You got to take these 2 screws in the back, Those are Phillips head screws as well. I'm going to go for a micro driver on them because the screw head's pretty small. Be careful as you're removing these. These are small screws. They can bounce off your table and onto your floor, and then it's a search and rescue mission, particularly if you have deep carpets or kind of bouncy floors around. So just be careful. Lessons learned. That's why I try to do it in the middle of my bench, and I like to keep my hands close for them. With those 6 screws out now, we can remove the side plate. There you go. It's a very dry reel. Again, this reel was made back in the late 1980s, so it's time to make sure that that gets cleaned up. The first thing I do when I work on these reels is I take these yoke springs off. Well, that's actually the second thing I do. The first thing I do is I take a picture of the insides of this. It's funny how quickly you can get these things wrong, and if you get them wrong, well, the reel's just not going to work properly. So take a picture right now. One of the things that's interesting to note where that dog is, how it's connected, and where the dog spring is. Because when you start pulling things off, that's one of the easiest things to knock off. And boy, if you knock it off and you don't know where it goes, well, you're going to be in a little bit of trouble there. Then there's a whole stack of these tension washers underneath the bearing. Looks like there's 4 of them, and then the bearing sits on top. So those are going to go into a corner of my parts tray. And we're going to just kind of walk this up now. And again, be careful here because that dog is still sitting underneath here. I'm going to remove the gear stack. I'm going to remove that little click ratchet. And I just wanted to check. I didn't see a bearing or anything here. This may just pull out. Oh, no, it doesn't pull out. But I suspect that underneath the spool here, there's a C-clip holding this on. I am unsure if a bearing is in there. I'm going to remove the yoke and the jack behind it. And notice that that jack rides in the cavity. And well, when we go to reinstall, we have to mesh the stud on the eccentric with the hole in the jack. All right, that's clean. That'll go in the basket. One of the things I'm going to do right now is I don't know if we have a bearing under there, and I haven't taken it apart, but one of the things I do know is oil can seep, and so I am going to put some oil underneath there, and if there is a bearing, when I turn it, that bearing will get coated. I'm going to wipe off this click ratchet for the anti-reverse. This reel does not have an instant anti-reverse. Also going to wipe off the little grease that's on the anti-reverse dog. And we're going to go seat that so that I can keep that anti-reverse dog with tension on it and the spring. That goes in this direction. That's so that when you turn your reel and you're cranking, well, you have an override. But as soon as you go to back your reel off, that dog is going to sit in one of those grooves. It's going to stop your reel from backpedaling. Next up then, we'll come over and we'll clean the shoulders on your yoke. That's for the pinion gear. I'm going to use fishing reel grease. I use Penn Precision reel grease as my go-to grease. We're just going to put it onto the shoulders here, both sides. Then we're going to check the pinion gear itself. You want to make sure that the grooves inside the teeth are all clean and clear. These are. You want to make sure that they're not bent. If you got a reel with a gear grind, chances are either the pinion gear or the main gear has been bent. That's well, how does it bend? It bends under force, and it's generally fighting a fish, and something just gets in the way. Well, I just put that in upside down by habit. There is a slot in the pinion gear that faces the spool. So let's make sure that that works. Now we have felt washers in this. It wasn't uncommon for Shimano to use felt washers. We're going to use drag grease to keep these felt washers fresh. Now, people have asked me from time to time, I have felt washers in my reels, should I get rid of them? Well, no, you don't need to, unless you find out that you're tearing them up. So sometimes That'll happen. Maybe the fish that you're fighting is just, you're always fighting fighting fish. And they will, over time, tear them up. Well, then you want to go to a alternative like a Carbon Tex drag washer. But if everything's fine, you do not need to go with that replacement. Just working that up. The grease that's in here, it's pretty good. I want to say that the reel has been serviced over time. It's not the first time that this thing has been serviced. I'm just cleaning it up. So I want to clean the inner cavity of this gear while we're doing that. The purpose of the grease on the washers is to keep them flexible. It doesn't help with drag, slip, or anything like that. It's to keep the washers from drying out and cracking. Okay, that's good. We'll take that cow's grease, we'll put it on there, we'll wipe it down with my gloved hand again, using that as a tool, and then we wipe the excess off of that with a paper towel. We can reset the, well, let's put the first washer in first. There's 2 tabs on this washer to kind of hold it in place, so make sure that you get that into the slots in the main gear. Do the same thing here with the main gear that you did with the pinion gear. Inspect all of the teeth. Make sure that the channels are clear. So this one says custom built for the Shimano headquarters. I imagine it's got to be an interesting story there. I don't know. Does that mean was a salesman sample? Does it mean that maybe they use these as giveaways or promotions and something? I don't know. But it's there, and it's in Shimano's typeset or font style. So probably a little bit more there that could be learned about this reel. All right, we have a drag stack now. We have a second one of these felt washers. We want to do the same thing. Clean off the old grease. Reapply new. Before I go any further, I'm going to take the round washer that has the square on it. That's going to mount over the shaft. And the second fabric washer comes on, so we're doing the same thing. We're re-greasing the washer, wiping off the excess with a paper towel, replacing that one. The middle washer has got 2 studs on it. It's called an eared washer. And those are going to go in the same slot that you saw the tabs from the first fabric washer go in. Then the last one may have been replaced. This looks like it may be original to the reel. I'm not sure. It's a hard washer. It's not a felt washer. That goes on top. My guess is that's a replacement because the hole for the arbor is a little bit loose. So I'm going to guess that probably was a replacement at some point in its life. All right, that goes back on. And that gear set is essentially what is needed there. So we just want to take the jack. That's going to move the yoke up and down. I guess I gotta put this on first, but you can get it in behind there. A little bit of grease behind it, a little bit of grease in the slot where it's going to ride. Slip that down underneath. Make sure that the U on that piece of metal wraps around the stud there. And I generally like to move that to the up position. That's the up position. And I like to move the eccentric to the up position. You've got to match these or mate these in order to have this thing set up properly. All right, we had a series of washers come off. I think we can put those on now. There were 4 of these tension washers and a small bearing shield. So I like to put these face to face. So I rest, the first one goes with the crown facing up, the second one down, third one up, fourth one down. And you have that small washer which is for the bearing shield. And we have that bearing which we oiled before. Now we can take the case and put the case back on after we put those 2 springs over the yoke. That's the one. That's the other. And that's the benefit of having a parts tray. You don't miss things like that. You can look into your parts tray, see them, and know that you have to do something there. Well, there's a little piece of paper or something here. Gotta get that out of the way. Probably got picked up in the parts tray, so maybe that's the disadvantage. Give it a run. Turn it. Make sure that everything's doing what it should be doing. Make sure you've got that anti-reverse dog clicking away and everything. All right, let's grab this. One of the things you need to do is you need to work to get that stud in that hole. Sometimes it slips right in, and sometimes you need to move it back and forth a little bit to get that done. So we're going to put some tension on it. We're going to hold it, and then we're going to move it back and forth. There we go. And when you feel it pulling it in, then you know you've got it. And one way to do a quick test on it, probably should have put a screw in there. There we go. We put the screws in first, and we'll test. I'll put 2 of them in. So I'm just going to put these in east and west right now. Remember, there's 6 screws. 4 of them are bigger screws, and 2 small ones from behind. But what I want to do right now is I want to hold that side plate in and make sure that I have the free spool when I trip that lever there. If I didn't get it, well, everything was going to be tight in the reel. So you need to make sure that it's done before you go buttoning this whole thing up. It'd be a shame to put all those screws back in, tighten everything down, find out you missed. All right, this should be gear. You can see we're turning the piece. Now we should be in free spool, and we are. The spool is rotating, but not the axle shaft. So we're all good there. All right, next piece up then is to finish those screws. There's 2 more of those. For whatever reason, this one, I guess it must be grease clogged. Maybe that's why I had to come in with that screwdriver. One of them just is being a little stubborn. Harder to grip than the others. So if you have any questions on this reel or any reel in particular, maybe you're working on one and you're stuck, if you leave those questions in the comment section, I will try to respond to you. The best way to reach me is by email and or the comment section. It's very difficult for me to answer all of the questions on the phone, and I apologize to those of you that leave voice messages and find that it takes me some time to get back to you. It's just it's a hard thing for me to do while I'm in the shop. So I would recommend to you that if you do need to reach me, leave the comments. I am pretty good about that in the mornings, and that's probably your best way to reach me. All right, 1 more screw here, and then we'll put the 2 small ones in on the back. And we'll tighten it down, and we'll go over to the other side and show you how to service the spool and the non-gear side. We have those 2 more small screws here, 1 on each side. That's with the micro driver that we used. And it's a good thing to keep these tools close at hand. It's very easy to recognize that you need a tool, go put your reel down, come back and find out that you've forgotten some things. And those of you looking at my bench, I did not forget that little washer over there. That washer is the bearing shield on this side. And then we can go ahead and bring the star adjuster on. Before we do that, let's clean this side. So I'm going to use a kitchen scrubby and a rod and reel cleaner. This is Penn's rod and reel cleaner. No, the manufacturer brand does not matter. It's not sacrilegious or whatever to use Penn's cleaners and greases on Shimano reels. All right, I'll just clean that up. That's a good one for dissolving the old greases and dirts and that. Make sure that you put your star adjuster on even, and that it turns easily as it goes to mount. You do not want to get your star adjuster cross-stripped. Just pushing that little So this washer here, the one that I keep pushing down, is actually a little bit of a shim or a brace between the handle and the washer and the star adjuster. And the reason for that is you don't want to back off the washer and jam it against the handle. Next up then is the cap nut. We're going to tighten that up. And when you go to tighten your nut, either have the point facing directly to that circle or have the flat side. That usually guarantees that you're going to line up the mounting hole for that screw with that cap. And looks like we did it. So I'll go ahead and put this in. Yep, we got it. All right. Last part then is go over to the other side. Now we're servicing this reel, and Scott, I'm going to think Scott got this one from a flea market, and it already had this braided line on there. Well, one of the things that you should do as you service your reels, and I recommend doing that on an annual basis, one of the things you should do is remove the old line and trash it. So all kinds of things happen, braid bunches, monofilament is subject to UV damage and stretch. And quite honestly, the price for the line is a whole lot cheaper than losing the fish of a lifetime to bad line and breaking it off. So I've seen folks that have been fishing line for 10 or 12 years. They get hooked up, and well, you can imagine losing $20 lures when you could have replaced the line for $10. All right, we have a bushing on the back here, not a bearing. So we're just going to put a little bit of grease onto that. Kind of cover the hole so it's smooth gliding for this. Next up comes the spool. That comes out. The reason why we wanted to get the spool out, let's spin that bearing, make sure that it's working fine. It is. Go ahead and oil that piece. And as I suspected, there is a C-clip that's holding the shaft on, but I don't see anything in there, so I'm going to think it's probably just a bushing. Last thing I want to do then is I want to clean off the shaft of the spool and just put a light coating of grease so that as it moves in and out of that pinion gear for a free spool, that it moves easily. Hold your line in so that you don't trap it when you put it back into the case, and just reinstall in the case. Oops, I put it backwards. That was an oops. So used to putting the spools in with the case on the right side being closed. We just did one of those. We did a Daiwa, and the Daiwa was a C-line with a single piece case. So, all right, find your writing, line up your holes. Go ahead and get the 3 screws. Looks like I got one in, not the other. There we go. Don't force anything when you're doing this. If you find that something is not fitting right or not snapping into place, don't manhandle it, or woman handle it, or whatever handle it. Just take your time, reset it, and try again. If something is not closing properly, something is out of alignment. And even though there wasn't much on this side, it's possible that when we put the spool in, we trap the line on the other side. And if you trap the line in the spool's not going to go all the way in. And if you're trying to force the side plate to close with that spool being trapped, well, you're only asking for problems. All right, we got one more of these to do. We'll test it, and hopefully everything will be nice and ready to go fishing again for Scott. This is a 1987 reel. You know, I would challenge you that the reels that are being produced today are just not that much better. You got different materials. You probably have a few more ball bearings. But other than that, you know, these things are workhorses. Then they just last and last. All right, let's see how we do. It's a 5.2 to 1 gear ratio. We are in gear, so let's give it a Look at it, how nice and easy. It's always fun. Turn down the drag, make sure that those felt drags are compressed. They're holding, and with felt drags, please, if you're fishing these reels, back the drag, the star adjuster off at the end of the day. Don't leave them compressed. It's going to dry them out. It's going to adhere them to the metal washers inside, and it's going to reduce the life and use of that. Let's go to free spool. You could cast this one a long, long way, even though it only has the one bearing on the spool and that this side is a bushing. And I imagine if you wanted to hot rod the reel, you would find a way to replace that bushing with a bearing. So that's it. That's your Shimano TL or Triton drag, Star drag. It's a custom-made one for the headquarters at Shimano in California. It was made in 1987, and it's ready to go fishing again. I hope you've enjoyed that. To all of our first responders and essential personnel, thank you for everything it is that you've been doing to keep us safe. To everyone, I wish you a great day fishing. Have fun repairing your reels, and please stay safe, stay well, and stay watching. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Have a great day.